Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're diving into the often misunderstood world of corporate auditing. I know, you're probably picturing quiet accountants crunching numbers in some windowless back room. But actually, scratch that. It turns out this field is really a high-stakes survival guide for the corporate conscience. This whole thing is about power, ethics, and navigating some incredibly difficult corporate gray areas.
Just to set the stakes right out of the gate, I want you to imagine this. You're an internal auditor, deep in a foreign subsidiary. You've just uncovered a massive vulnerability in their operations. And suddenly, the local manager pulls you aside and offers you a massive payout. They call it a facilitating payment, just to look the other way and leave your findings out of the final report. So what do? Do you take it because it's just a local custom, or do you report it?
Well, here's how we're going to navigate this topic together today. We'll start with the true mission, move into the ultimate mandate, break down the 4 pillars, practice navigating corporate dilemmas, and then wrap it all up with the ultimate responsibility.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1. The true mission, not just bean counters.
You see, there's a really sharp contrast between the myth of policing a company and the reality of actually improving it. We almost always picture this internal police force just looking to lock people up. But the reality? The true purpose is to provide independent assurance and literally add value to the organization's operations. Think of them as objective consultants working to make the entire enterprise stronger.
And when you look at the official definition from the source material, it completely backs this up. It defines internal auditing as an independent, objective assurance and consulting activity designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. Notice those specific words, consulting and add value. That fundamentally shifts the role from being a backward-looking critic to a forward-looking advisor.
So the auditor's job really boils down to evaluating risk management, assessing control processes, and improving governance. But check out this vital distinction here at the bottom. Eliminating risk is actually management's job. Management is the one that has to design and implement the controls to handle risk. The auditor? They bring a systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate if those controls actually work. Basically, they evaluate, they don't implement.
Okay, moving on to Section 2. The ultimate mandate, the source of authority.
That mandate we're talking about is called the Internal Audit Charter. And guys, this isn't just some casual memo or a polite handshake agreement. It is a formal written document that officially defines the purpose, authority, and responsibility of the internal audit activity. It spells out exactly why they exist within the company and precisely what they are allowed to do.
And this detail is absolutely fascinating because it shows where the real power comes from. Notice that final approval of the Internal Audit Charter resides with the board. Their mandate comes straight from the board of directors, not the CEO, and definitely not the managers they are out there auditing. This structural setup is absolutely essential for true independence. It literally protects the auditors from the effects of irresponsible policy changes or pressure from the very people they're supposed to be evaluating.
And because of this board-approved charter, auditors are granted incredible unrestricted access. We're talking access to records, personnel, and physical properties relevant to their engagements. This means practically no one can legally hide documents, block access to a facility, or tell their employees not to speak with the audit team. Scope limitations are practically impossible when this is properly enforced.
Right. Let's look at Section 3, the 4 pillars, the II Code of Ethics.
Now, with all that power, there have to be rules, right? There are 4 non-negotiable principles that form this code of ethics. First up, integrity, which demands honesty and legal compliance. Second is objectivity, requiring an entirely unbiased assessment. Third is confidentiality, which dictates the prudent use of sensitive data. And finally, competency, ensuring they only perform work they actually have the requisite skills to complete. These 4 pillars elevate the profession way above just knowing how to do math.
The entire purpose of this code is to promote an ethical culture among professionals who serve others. It's a standard that goes far, far beyond mere legality. It's not just about keeping people out of jail. It's about establishing profound trust. Because honestly, if an organization can't trust the objective assurance provided by its auditors, the entire governance structure basically collapses.
Which brings us to Section 4, Navigating Corporate Dilemmas, the Minefield. Let's put these rules to the test.
Here's Dilemma 1. Imagine you're auditing a chemical plant for your company. During your review, you find clear, undeniable evidence that the plant is illegally dumping toxic waste. You obviously feel a sense of loyalty to your company, and you know that reporting this is going to cause a massive public scandal. So what is your actual ethical obligation here? Do you just sort of stop collecting information so you don't have to report it?
Well, the answer is absolute. Based on the pillar of integrity, you must report it. The rules explicitly state you cannot knowingly be a party to any illegal activity. If you deliberately fail to collect information just out of loyalty to the company, you actually become legally and ethically complicit in the crime. You've got to observe the law and make the disclosures expected by the profession.
Okay, dilemma 2. Let's revisit that exact scenario from the beginning. You're at a foreign subsidiary, and a manager offers you a substantial facilitating payment, let's just call it a bribe, to omit negative observations from your audit report. But let's say this type of payment is actually considered a completely normal, accepted part of business culture in this specific country. Do you accept it?
Under the objectivity pillar, the answer is a strict no. You have to refuse the payment. The code strictly prohibits accepting anything that may impair or even be presumed to impair your professional judgment. And it doesn't matter at all what the local customs are. The profession's global standards always supersede regional business habits. Accepting that cash fundamentally destroys your ability to make a balanced, unbiased assessment.
Now for dilemma 3. This one is tough, and it's pretty emotional. You're performing a highly sensitive engagement, and you accidentally uncover confidential HR information. It reveals that your best friend at the company, who happens to be the CFO, is going to be fired right after an upcoming labor negotiation. Do you pull them aside and give them a quick heads up?
If we look at the confidentiality rule, the standard is incredibly clear. You must stay completely silent. The code dictates that you shall not use information for any personal gain or in a manner that would be detrimental to the legitimate objectives of the organization. Using confidential information to warn a friend is a direct violation. Why? Because the decision of when and how to notify the CFO belongs entirely to the company, not to you.
All right, our final one, dilemma 4. Imagine you're auditing a department and you stumble upon what looks like financial theft. You highly suspect a clerk is embezzling funds. But here's the catch. This is the first time you've ever encountered embezzlement, and you have zero formal training in fraud investigation. Do you take matters into your own hands, lock the doors, and pull the clerk into a room for an interrogation?
The competency pillar says, stop immediately. You must engage only in those services for which you have the necessary knowledge, skills, and experience. Investigating fraud requires highly specific, specialized expertise. If you try to interrogate them yourself, you might completely bungle the investigation or even violate their civil rights. This is a great reminder that sometimes the most ethical choice you can make is simply knowing your own limits and handing the reins over to a specialist.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, the ultimate responsibility, the burden of truth.
Ultimately, as an internal auditor, you aren't just checking boxes. You are acting as the guardian of corporate integrity. You must disclose all material facts known to you that could distort a report if they were left hidden. And honestly, that requires immense courage. Courage to stand up to management, to refuse bribes, to stay completely silent to protect confidentiality, and to admit when you lack the competency to proceed. So this leaves us with one massive question to think about. In a world filled with corporate gray areas, divided loyalties, and intense pressures, are you prepared to be the objective truth?